Welcome to the community.
I am Shey Rivera Ríos, Shey Riaku Rivera Ríos, Boricua, Puerto Rican, living in Providence, Rhode Island, Narragansett land. So my creative practice, that's a really great question right now because I feel like I've decided that I'm not sure what it is because of how multifaceted it is and has been over the past 15 to 20 years. So I grew up as a very creative kid, very curious, you know, out in the environment and in nature in rural Puerto Rico, rural Boriquen. And I think I just, as an artist, I like using mediums to more like tell stories and or build worlds and create worlds that talk about some of the realities that we face in our lives as like people of color, or I do speak a lot about the Puerto Rican experience. But I also like projecting out to possibilities. Like what would it look like for all of us to be more centered in our culture, more centered in our ancestry, and like use those things and gifts that we inherit to build better worlds. So I just, for example, just finished a production called Antigonex, and that was a theatrical piece that came out of a writing. And I think it was a great way to just wrap up all of the practices that I bring, where I do video work, I do performance art, I do organizing, and all of it came together really well into that piece. So at this point in my trajectory, I think that I've been gravitating to projects that are, I guess the term is transmedia. It's just interdisciplinary projects that the main goal is to tell a story, and then you're using multiple media to like engage with people in that storytelling.
And what helped you develop that transmedia practice?
So I didn't go to art school per se. I just practiced art making in different community settings and as a young person. And I think the curiosity is what really took me there, of like, what could I learn to add to my toolkit of how I could share messages with the world and like, you know, share my experience, help other people connect to their experiences. I think meeting a lot of people from different disciplines has been huge. I spent 8 years of my life at AS220, a nonprofit organization in Providence, Rhode Island, a cultural center, where I got to work with and engage with and support many different kinds of artists, all mediums, all ages, all different times in their creative paths. So that was really helpful too, to get to experiment and learn how other people engage their creative work. I find affinity and comfort in like groups of creative people, but also I think my work is trying to speak to people who are working class, who are of color, who care about their community, and hoping that the messages that I share with them validate the work that they're doing or their experiences in some way, that they can see themselves in it.
Yeah, and in this working within one community, right? As an artist who is experimenting different media, how did you make the financials work?
Yeah, so I work with many different communities. And then in my specific creative practice, I decide who I speak to. But then in my creative business, I engage with, I think, a broader set of people. So the way I've basically built my practice at this point, I used to engage and work with a lot of institutions, organizations, foundations, things like that. And I decided to take my step forward as an independent artist and launch my own studio practice. So I have Studio Loba, and Studio Loba is the container for all the projects that I run. But I run projects, I do consulting, I do workshops, I also get contracted for projects, I get contracted for curation work, I get to work with cities developing larger art initiatives. For example, El Corazón de Holyoke was a project that I was working with an amazing community in Holyoke to develop public art pieces for a cultural area that they wanted to designate the Puerto Rican cultural area. So that was working with the city and the Center for Design Innovation, so a small nonprofit, and a cluster of organizations, local organizations like Nueva Esperanza and a few others. So I like working with groups of people. And I feel like another thing I do really well and I've been getting a lot of energy from is supporting cohorts of artists. to help them build out their practice or talk through the challenges of what does it mean to be an independent creative business right now. I feel like I've done that. Like I've opened up and experimented and seen all the things I could do. And now I'm more in a process of editing down to select what are the ones that I'm really good at and that give me the most joy. And I think that's something important for artists to often think about, because we don't have to do all the things. And if we do all the things, to understand and be compassionate that it's for experimentation and growth, but then that you also get to like sharpen down and hone, because we also have to save our energy and decide where we want to put our energy and maximize it.
Yeah. What do you think are some safe practices for that, for supporting artists on different stages?
Yeah, that's the super important question of all time. Like I feel it's so hard because everyone is in different parts of their practices, but we still have conversations about what that would mean. I feel like I would like for us to get closer to an artist living wage. You know, like what does that look like? I would like for artists to not have to struggle to like think about compensation and value of their work. Like I would like for us to not be in situations where we're swindled for like free work or free labor. I would like for people to learn how to engage with us and for us to know where our boundaries are so that we can do our best work and be nourished. I want those things. And it's like, I think this relates to, it's artists, but it's people in general. We are gig workers. We are independent workers, many of us, and there are not a lot of systems in place to support that. And the world is changing, and a lot of people are just doing that kind of, are putting together different kinds of practices in order to be sustainable. So in speaking to the artist journey of what we need, it speaks to what other people need too. And it's like, we do need healthcare. We do need the ability to grow in our practice. We need the ability to not have to hustle all the time and pause and rest. You know, in the corporate world, that's like paid time off. For us, like we need those things. And we can have them, we can build them in. And I think the role of cities and foundations and nonprofits institutions are to help us build those systems. Because the longer we don't have them, the more we're gonna continue in this crisis that affects everyone. So we can't continue to indulge circular conversations in nonprofits or foundations about how do we best support artists. It's like, I think we all can agree on what we need. And it's like the sustainability piece, artists have been saying it for a long time. It's like, how can you help us thrive and do the best work and have the systems that we need so we don't have to struggle?
How do we get together? How do we actually get together in community? What are some of the most effective ways of building those gatherings?
The role of the artist is not just to produce work, it's to walk the talk of like, what is the world we want to live in and build out and like help our communities move in that direction. That's what I believe. And then how do we build those spaces? I think a lot of artists are like really so knowledgeable at building those spaces already. And it's like following that lead of like, we need community spaces. Community spaces where there are shared values, or the space is there's space to build shared values. Community spaces where things are not so structured and you're not just being told what to do. Places to just come together with people to have conversations, but get to meet people who are different than you, and then just have spaces of being a community. Some of the best ways sometimes are just like inviting people to come together to talk about specific topics, inviting them for a conversation like, you know, we're doing right now, or just producing and creating work together, collaborating, things that take us outside of this transaction of capitalism that allow us to get to know each other from a more spiritual or personal way and allow us to exchange our stories. I think, you know, Indigenous people and Black people for a long time have been doing story circles as part of cultural practices. Story circles still to this day are core key to community healing. And I think about that, you know, it's like, what are the things that our ancestors or people before us, people currently do that are important practices to build social cohesion? I mean, those come from cultural spaces. So, you know, I think the more we do that and more imagination, I think giving ourselves the opportunity to not just talk about the problems, but think about what are the possibilities. And also giving young people the encouragement the celebration, the power for them to take that space too, instead of shutting them down or thinking that they have less, that their experiences are less valuable. Is like, no, we need young people in the room.
What do you think is community, or what's your ideal understanding of community?
I think for me, like, community is the people who you are in direct relationship to, that you engage with in exchange and support systems often. And I think a lot about that when we go through difficult things like trauma or like, loss, any shape of loss. Most of the healing that comes from regrouping is just getting back to a sense of being in relationship to others.
What are some of the ways in which you are moving forward? And I think, this is projecting towards the future, right? But what other dreams are there?
I have lots of dreams. And I have to chill out sometimes, because sometimes dreams means more work. And I don't really want to be working all the time, and I think we shouldn't be working all the time. Like, a lot of people talk about this hustle culture, and I'm like, I do a lot of things. I personally don't go around waving my flag of like, since I do a lot of things, this is my badge of honor. Is like, that's not the goal for me at all. I want shit to be easier for other people that are coming after me. The fact that younger folks can like take over a city, do festivals, queer people are out more visible, Black and brown folks have a bigger stake in the city. Those to me are like, that's important. I think part of the question you're asking for me is like, I see myself as a person that opens roads. I think that's a very culturally rooted role. Abre Caminos is really centered in Afro and indigenous culture. It's like the hermit carrying the lantern to the darkness to shine new paths. And I think it's important. I thrive and gain joy from people knowing that there are alternatives of being aside from what we were taught. And I think being an artist is helpful toward that. I want to push the boundary of what is possible in the city. I want to push the boundary of what is possible for us artists in Providence, in Rhode Island, for us to scale up our work, to do work that is fully imaginative, fully nourished. Like, what does it look like, for us to have what we need to build out these stories that are incredible, and it's high quality, and it's done by people of color, and like, people of all walks of life and all cultures can experience it and get a sense of awe and joy. I also want, my big vision is like for artwork, for the artists, for the arts sector to be in total alignment to what we need to build in terms of our communities feeling nourished and resourced and safe. And by safe, I mean like for all the stuff that continues to happen, the violence against Black and brown people, to just stop. And then what does that mean in terms of my collective responsibility to other folks? Because things should be easier to people. If I enter a space, I should leave it in a way that's easier for other people to enter. I'm a person that, I project out idealistic and optimistic views of the world because I've chosen to. It doesn't mean that I don't hold space for the grief, for the loss, for the really heavy and like the pain, because I do all the time. And I think in my decision to be the kind of artist that I am right now, I've just decided that in those transformation circles, I need to close the loop to take what is, hard and difficult and like causes harm, to turn it into the other side. What can we learn from it? What can we get from it? And also, what are the options and possibilities? At least for me as an artist, I see my role as like, I want to paint a picture where this incredible world of possibilities exists, and that it is so compelling that it seduces everyone to walk toward that path. Yeah. So yeah.
Wow. And through all those processes, what grounds you?
Well, what grounds me is Boricua pasteles. I love food. What grounds me is the feeling of being in the water, in the sea, in the beach, swimming. What grounds me is my partner's love, my friend's love. What grounds me is that, I'm seen. Like, being seen is like really important, and seen like in a human way, by my community, by my friends, by the people that I love. And honestly, also the artwork of other artists who are doing similar work. Like, you know, people like Becky Davis, Vare Kumba, like, you know, Hernán Jourdan, my partner Seth Torje, like so many incredible artists, Fumi Aileru, do work that gives me energy. Yeah, I think being gentle is like something important that we could do right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yay. Thanks so much. This is nice to get to talk with you and unpack these big things.